Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-hosts, Maddie B. and Rick David. And I'm going to jump right into it with high tempo for the week. My topic is going to be a little bit on NFL contracts. Adam Vinatieri, field goal kicker, played in a snowstorm over the weekend, which was an awesome game to watch. But because of that, he missed 2 field goals, and that knocked down his bonus. He has to hit 90% of the field goals for the year to earn $500,000. And those 2 misses, I think he had 2 misses, maybe more, knocked him down well below that, so he's going to have to be perfect on the rest of the year to hit that. But if you watch that game, awesome game in the snow. I didn't think it was going to end in anything but a tie, but McCoy broke one to seal that game. So we'll go around. Matt, I know you had a good one. What's your high tempo for the week?
I wanted to send some love to Tennessee. After starting off in an absolute firestorm with their head coach, they pulled a rabbit out of their hat and landed Jeremy Pruitt, who was previously the defensive coordinator for Alabama, for Georgia, and was actually the DC when Florida State won their national championship. He was a coach that I wanted to see retained, and they weren't going to pay him the type of money that the programs like Alabama were going to pay him. So now, as the head coach at Tennessee, he's slated to make about $4 million annually, with additional bonuses for making the college football playoff, for winning the SEC. It has the potential, if he can turn the program around and get them going in the right direction, that he could put some serious coin in his pocket. So snaps to them.
Rick, what about you? What's your high tempo for this week?
Agents have moved it all, so all are still out there. But if you're a top free agent reliever, a lot of them are already off the table. Drew Smiley went to the Cubs about a couple minutes ago. Tommy Hunter about a half hour ago went to the Phillies. Pat Neschek's with the Phillies. Brian Shaw earlier today went to the Rockies. So a lot of your top relievers are gone. So it makes you think baseball is stealing the Yankees model, which they started, which was pretty much have shut down relievers from 7, 8, 9, so you couldn't touch the team. So looks like that model will continue. So, and it looks like this free agency will go long, especially with these free agents. And nonstop trade banter. Manny Machado's on the market. Garrett Cole, Josh Harrison's out there. So a lot of names are being thrown around at this hour. No deal's really been made. Not unless you're Chase Headley, you got traded back to the Padres. So there's a Pittsburgh high school kid right there for you.
All right, we're going to continue with that and get into our segment. I just have it titled The Steel City. We've been doing Pittsburgh updates, checking in on that. I haven't really had it on the board, but I'm going to add it now. Starting off with the NHL. The Penguins were looking good last week, ended up losing 2 games, so now they're all the way, they dropped to 6th in the Metropolitan Division. 5-5 the last 10. The goal differential is still -10, which is awful. The points, 35. The Blue Jackets in first place only have 39. So a couple wins and they're right in first place. So I'm not too worried, but I would like to see more consistency. They looked like they were going to be on the upswing. Lose 2 games, not too good. Rick, you have anything specific on the Pirates or Penguins to add before we jump into the Steelers?
Mostly just trade rumors with the Pirates. I don't see anything happening, not unless they throw everything and everything at them. I see everybody coming back. Penguins are going to be about the same. They got Matt Huntwick back from injury, so he had a concussion. And now Matt Murray's coming off the IR from his injury, so I think that's going to be a good there. So Matt Murray's going to be back. So,
all right. Well, I saved it for last. Steelers, our last team on the Steel City update, looking good, looking actually great. Steelers right now in first place. They clinched the AFC North, 11-2. They have the Patriots on Sunday. It's a 4:25 game. We're going to go ahead and start talking that as our next topic. Patriots and Steelers. It's the biggest game so far of what I would assume the NFL season. The winner of this game most likely gets home field advantage, especially if it's our Steelers, because the Steelers have 2 more games to play. They would have a 2-game lead on the Patriots, and one of those last 2 games is the Browns. I don't see them dropping that game. So if they get this game Sunday, even if they falter the next week, coming down off basically 2 rivalry games on Sunday night and then a Monday night game, now they're playing in the prime spot on Sunday afternoon. I believe the game's on CBS, is going to be broadcast everywhere. Teams are clicking on all cylinders. I was actually surprised that the Patriots lost last night to the Dolphins. So they played a Monday night. They're going to have a shorter week, not quite a Thursday jump from Sunday. But I'm hoping that helps the Steelers out. It's at home in Pittsburgh. Patriots are coming to us on a shortened week, coming off a loss. It's looking like it's going to line up. I'd like to get you guys' thoughts. We'll start with you, Matt. Patriots, Steelers, who do you got and why?
I'm going to go with New England here. I mean, I think they have the more consistent program. They got Gronk coming back off of his suspension for thinking he was at a WWE match. To me, they're the team to beat. You know, until they prove that they can play consistently on that level with the New England Patriots, they're going to be second rate. They just, to me, I think they're New England had their garbage game last week versus Miami. It's going to get Pittsburgh in that mindset of overlooking the game, or, you know, I know that last week there was speculation that they were going to be looking past Baltimore, and I had messaged you earlier saying that I thought Pittsburgh was going to lose it, and gosh darn it if the Ravens didn't give them everything they could handle. So I think the combination of some of the issues with Shazier being out does that affect their defense more going up against Brady as compared to Flacco?
I was actually going to bring up that you did text us that the Ravens are going to win that game, and now you pick the Patriots. So I mean, if you pick them enough, you're bound to get lucky. Steelers have only won 8 games in a row here, but I'm going to say off the bat, the Patriots obviously need this one more. And then they have the head-to-head, and then they just have to win out, basically. Steelers would have to do the same and hope that the Patriots lose. I'm not as worried with the Shazier injury against the Patriots just because they don't have the typical speed to stretch the field. Gronkowski's more of a big matchup, someone that's tougher to match up. He's not going to be a burner, which is where Shazier was so important because he had the speed to cover those faster guys in the slot, wherever he was versatile. And against Patriots, they really don't have anyone like that, or at least consistency-wise, that can stretch the field. They haven't had that basically the whole Tom Brady's career. Maybe you could count the Randy Moss year. They've had some guys that seem like they hit a streak or two. But even when they got Chad Johnson over the hill, Randy Moss could be considered over the hill. That's not their MO. It's more crossing routes and things like that I think play into the Steelers' hands. They just have to get over that hump. It's good that it's at home. But what are your thoughts, Rick?
Well, this is one thing that I thought about was Patriots had to travel to Miami and lost Monday. They're going to go back to New England and then travel back to Pittsburgh. So it's a lot of travel time that they're going to be wasting time, where Pittsburgh was at home against the Ravens, won, and they have the extra day because they already knew they were playing the Patriots, so they got to watch the game. What it looked to me like when the Miami was facing them, because they have a good amount of weapons, not a great amount like the Steelers, but they have a good amount. Jay Cutler looked good because he was only passing like 5 yards every time. He wasn't bombing them all over the field. He was passing like 5-7 yard routes and then taking them. So they spread out the Patriots. But I thought what Miami did also good, they blitzed nonstop because they knew they could get through the gaps. Because the New England offensive line isn't as good as it was in years past. So they knew if they blitzed, they got to Brady, they were going to knock him off his game. So I think that's the key for the Steelers is you got to blitz and put pressure on Brady, because with their running game, it's nothing spectacular. They just have a lot of guys that they can rotate real quick and put fresh guys in. So I think that's the other key as well. So yeah, Gronkowski wasn't there to draw, a player away to watch him. So, I mean, that is a key there. And they shut down Cooks' bomb game. So that's one thing that, that wasn't there. So I take the Steelers just because the week helps, the travel helps. And I think the Steelers can play that 5-7 yard passing game. And they did pretty much against the Ravens. That's what helped them out. and then they would bomb them into Antonio when they needed it.
Yeah, the Ravens had a chance to put that game away, and they didn't. And then at the end, even the Steelers' field goal, I thought the Ravens had a decent chance. And then they had the big mistake at the end of the game. And for people that didn't watch it, I think there was about 13 seconds left. Flacco was trying to run out of bounds. He fumbled the ball. It went out of bounds. The clock stopped when the ball hit out of bounds. And then as soon as the ref set the ball, they wound the clock. The Ravens were at the line of scrimmage. They were lined up, at least in a position that they could have snapped the ball. Flacco was looking at the sideline. I don't know if it was a miscommunication. They didn't even know that they ran the clock. And then you hear that whistle. Jeff, who runs Spaces or Laces, he was at the game. He texted me for clarification because at the stadium he didn't even know what happened. And I had to tell him that, hey, the ball went out of bounds. And basically the rule is in place so that a running back running out of time, he doesn't just fumble the ball out of bounds on purpose or like lateral it out of bounds to stop the clock. So if an offensive guy fumbles the ball out of bounds, they just start the clock running whenever they set the ball in play. And of course, the refs' 2-minute drill, they're running, getting it lined up. Ravens were lined up. To me, it looked like. I don't know what the clock situation was because I think the producers of the game, was it on NBC or whatever, they weren't really clear on what was happening. And then the game ended anyway. So I'll take it. I don't think the Ravens were going to be able to get into a position. They might have actually even had a timeout. I don't know. They would have had to complete a pretty deep pass, I think. I can't remember. They were somewhere near the 40s or 50s, so they would have had to at least complete like a 15-yard or 20-yard pass. But overall, Steelers battled back. They fought the adversity. Antonio Brown is unbelievable, and I'd like to use that kind of as a segue into pretty much one of our bigger topics, the NFL MVP race, before we get into some more general NFL discussion. Right now, it's looking like it's wide open. Wentz went down. He was the clear leader. He has a torn ACL, so he's out for the rest of the season. That really kills the Philadelphia Eagles. I was hoping going into this weekend that you might finally get that matchup in the Super Bowl, the All-Pennsylvania Bowl. The Eagles looked like they were the class of the NFC. Steelers looking like they can clinch home field advantage, which is so key for them because you know it's going to be the Patriots-Steelers again for a rematch. And it helps if it's at Heinz Field again in the playoffs, unless something crazy happens, but it's just looking like the AFC has two top teams. NFC has a lot of competition. They don't have as many great teams, so I thought the Eagles were really going to have a chance. I hate to see an injury. ACL, luckily with the advances in technology, are getting better, but that kind of opens up the MVP race. I don't know if they're going to give it to a guy that got hurt, even though there's only, 2 games? He missed like half that game. So 2.5 games he wouldn't play. What are you guys' thoughts? Rick, we'll start with you this time.
I just don't see anybody emerging. I think if you were to look back after like week 5, you'd say Alex Smith, MVP. What happened? Kansas City just fell apart. Wentz is now hurt. Really, I'm looking at right now, there's about 5 guys that are over 1,000 yards running backs. I mean, Gurley's leading in touchdowns. Does Gurley get it? Rams are having a good season, but not a great season. I mean, and the quarterbacks, yeah, everybody's throwing for like 3,000 yards this year, but nobody's really, doing anything spectacular, having like 40, 50 touchdowns, passes or anything. So I just don't see anybody separating themselves from the field. And I think that's where you ask the question here this year. Do we finally go back to somebody who's not a quarterback or a running back and give him a shot? At least with Antonio Brown, you could say right now he's 1,509 yards. The next closest guy is Hopkins with 1,233 yards. He's beating him by almost 300 yards. So do you give it to a guy and beating him by 11 more catches? He may be the only guy besides Hopkins that may get over what would be the 100 catches. So, I mean, I think you give him I think he should be a legit candidate, and he'll probably get votes because nobody's separating themselves this year.
I'm actually coming around to Antonio Brown winning. I think he should, especially if the Steelers win this week, have the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. Right now, there are only 4 teams that have double-digit wins. The Eagles, as we mentioned, We'll see what happens to them. And the Vikings in the NFC. The Vikings, I'm not sure anyone on their team. They're more of a total team. Reminds me of the old Piston basketball teams where they don't have a superstar. Dalvin Cook looked like he was going to be like that till he got hurt. And then you go to the AFC, you have the Steelers and the Patriots. And that's where you really sit down. Is it a quarterback award? Because that's what it seems like it's going to. And I know I have Heisman Trophy on our big board here. And I was going to kind of pose the same question. Because you're looking at the NFL MVP, it seems like it always goes to a quarterback. And when it doesn't, it goes to a running back. And I don't even remember the last time, off the top of my head, I can't even remember anyone else really even being in the consideration. Maybe J.J. Watt. He didn't win it, did he? I know he won Defensive Player of the Year, but they talked about giving him the award, even though he was like one of the only players to score like touchdowns, interceptions, and a fumble. Something crazy like that the one year he was really close. But they always just default to the quarterback. And I think that's just kind of like where the NFL is right now. It's a quarterback league. You have a quarterback. That's the face of your franchise. Everyone wears helmets. Players change teams all the time. Players get hurt. You really don't know, if you're not a diehard football fan and the ratings are down, you really don't know these other guys except for the guys that have been around for a long time. And quarterbacks seem to stick longer. It takes them a while to get into the offense. Then by that time, they're doing commercials. They win a few playoff games. They're in the mix. Those commercials get their face out there. They just last in the league longer. But Matt, I'd like to get your thoughts on the MVP race. What do you think going into the last couple weeks?
Well, I tell you, a player that I think should be in the running for it, that probably won't get the recognition he deserves, is DeAndre Hopkins from the Texans. I think when you look at the course of the season that he's had, with going from Watson getting injured and then going into – who else did they have? They've gone through like
Tom
two
Savage.
or three quarterbacks this season. Tom Savage was there. Trying to think. Like, they had random quarterbacks through the course of the year that have been there.
Yates.
Yes. So, I mean, they've had different ones. You take your pick of the free agents on a Madden dynasty, and those are pretty much what they're picking from. And he's still managed to consistently have catches. He's consistently gotten big yardage. He's been producing regardless. So I think that he should be a player that should be recognized for it. I think the award definitely is going more towards the quarterbacks. And even though Wentz got hurt, I actually think with the season that he's having, Roethlisberger's name should be in the mix for the MVP award. He hasn't made the boneheaded plays this season that kind of have me in the past holding my breath for what
You're breaking
about
up
the Ravens
a bit there, Matt. But in the meantime,
am I there?
Yeah, you're here.
Okay, but in the past, you would wait for that other shoe to drop with Roethlisberger. That when's he going to make that really stupid throw, running around and just chucking it up? And he hasn't done that this year. And to me, he's making the offense run so much smoother that I think he should be a favorite for the MVP award.
All right, I got some stats to bring into this conversation. So over the past 10 years, off the top of my head, I didn't want to say definitively, but I was right. The quarterback has won it 9 out of the 10. It looks like, if I'm counting right. The lone running back was Adrian Peterson, 2012. Then going back through history, it is a mix of quarterbacks and running backs. They did have some defensive guys. 1986, Lawrence Taylor, linebacker. In 1971, Alan Page, defensive tackle for the Vikings. He's lesser known than Lawrence Taylor. And in 1982, Mark Mosley, Washington Redskins place kicker. They would never give it to a place kicker now. They would never do that. Because who's going to hang out with a place kicker? Who's going to put a place kicker in their commercials? Maybe. But you're going to get the same guys. And that's where... So as I'm looking through this list, back when it first came out, you had a couple repeat players. Jim Brown, Johnny Unitas. For the first, 30 years, those were the only 2 repeat players. Then you hit the 90s and 80s. You have Joe Montana repeat, Steve Young, Brett Favre, and Kurt Warner. Now you have Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning wins it 5 times. Tom Brady wins it a couple times. Aaron Rodgers wins it a couple times. So you're going, when it first starts, to never having repeat MVPs, really. Then you hit the 80s and 90s where you go to that quarterback-driven offense where you're passing more, you're not running the ball as much, and you're seeing the same exact guys win it over and over, and it's kind of a popularity contest. I mean, how many times can you give it to the same guy? Is he legitimately the best player in the league? Because like I said, off the top of my head, I remember a couple years where there was a question where J.J. Watt looked like he was the best player in the league. 30 years ago, he probably would have won the award. Now, where it's kind of a popularity social media age where everyone, you have to be the face of the franchise, you have to be doing all this extra stuff, that's where I think you just default to, okay, who is the most popular guy on the team, and that's where it'll be interesting to see if the Steelers do win out. They're 14-2, and there's a good chance that they do win out if they beat New England. Even if they drop a game, they're still 13-3, and then they could be close, tied with New England even. Then you have the same discussion. Do you give it to Tom Brady again? Does record matter? Like Matt said, maybe you give it to Hopkins, someone who basically is carrying their team, trying to get them to the playoffs. You have J.J. Watt out. You have other guys out on their team. Or are you just going by record? Because that's the same knock I'm going to give the Heisman here in a little bit. You're looking at the record, and then you're looking at what position they play. And I don't think you should do that. Antonio Brown is close. Calvin Johnson for the Lions had 1,900 something yards, close to 2,000. No wide receiver has ever reached 2,000 yards for a season, ever. And Brown is close. I think if he hits his pace, the last couple of games he had a total of like 400 something yards. If he hits that, he's gonna be close or at right around Calvin Johnson's mark. And these are big games, even like the Browns, maybe. I don't know if he's going to play in games like that. But if he plays the way he's been playing, there's a chance he actually breaks 2,000 yards. And if that happens, I think you have to give him the award. You have to. Best team in the league. Because I'm assuming if he hits that mark, they're going to beat the Patriots. I mean, he could go off like he did against the Ravens where it's a shootout, missed field goal at the end, could have cost the Steelers there. I was actually a little worried about the depth of that field goal, but he was able to knock it through. This week, you're going to have a similar situation. It's probably going to come down to the end. Could be back and forth. He could still put up a ton of numbers. And what makes him so dangerous is you have Bell out of the backfield, so they're not able to go ahead and, I mean, they did double cover him. There were a couple times where they just had a linebacker run straight at him before the ball was even snapped, and to kind of confuse Roethlisberger, and it just wasn't happening. So I think just looking at this list, that if you go back through Matt Ryan last year, Cam Newton, Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning, Adrian Peterson I mentioned, then Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. You're just seeing the same exact names over and over. Peyton Manning's out of the league. Aaron Rodgers is hurt. Cam Newton isn't playing as well as he did. Either is Matt Ryan. Tom Brady possibly. It doesn't look like Ben Roethlisberger has ever won it. So what's going to happen? It's a dud year. And does this award even mean anything? I don't think it does. It lost its luster. I mean, back in the day, you had 2003, you had Steve McNair and Peyton Manning tying for the award. That was a big deal back in the day. Steve McNair, they wanted to give it to him, but they also wanted to give it to Peyton Manning. That was a discussion. 1997, you had Brett Favre and Barry Sanders, which was another huge one. Do you give it to Barry? I mean, they had to sneak a quarterback in there those years. Maybe they do something similar where they give it to two guys. I'm not sure how the voting works, if it's kind of like the Heisman where they actually have to hit the votes, which is kind of crazy that there's been a couple ties, or maybe it's just something that people pick up. But that's what I got. I really hope Brown brings it home, and of course that means that the Steelers will win out and get that home field advantage for the playoffs. But do you guys have anything else to add on the MVP or the NFL in general?
Just I think when you look at what's going on with the MVP race, so much of it has to go back to that earlier point that we made about injuries going on in the league. I think this MVP race is a much better product and it's much more competitive if you don't have a quarter to a third of your star players out with season-ending injuries. So if the player, this has to be something over the winter meetings that the owners take a look at to see what they have to do to improve the overall quality of health for their players, because you can't have, going into the playoffs, the majority of your teams missing the majority of their star players due to injuries. Whether they be freak injuries or not, they're still, the collective amount of total injuries is just insane this season.
Yeah,
I agree with
Go
Matt.
ahead,
I mean, you look at something like the Houston game, and you look at Steelers-Houston, Watson, if Watson's there, that's a playoff team making a run. This team is done because they don't have a good quarterback. I mean, Green Bay is going to get back Rodgers this week, but the damage was already done. They were struggling to beat the Browns last week. I mean, injuries killed this year for the NFL, and I would say that's probably, along with other reasons, but that's definitely in your top 3 reasons why. Too many faces of the NFL. Watt's on tons of commercials. Rodgers is on tons of commercials. Clay Matthews is on commercials. He was out for a while. So, I mean, if there was a guy who does Matt Ryan not doing good, he was on commercials. All your commercial guys are all the guys that are injured or not playing well. So it kills your team when you market it around 10 guys and 6 of them are done for the season or injured most of the season.
Yeah, I've heard some players speak out. I was actually going to bring this up. When you have the injuries, some people were talking about the shortened week due to these Thursday night games, but they've been playing those for a couple years, so I don't really think that's it. I think it's kind of a combination of everything that they've been snowballing the past couple of years. A couple of years ago, they stopped getting rid of some of the hand fighting in the defensive backfield. If you remember, I can't remember how many years ago this was, but they wanted people to play more off the guy because they wanted more catches. More catches means more offense. So they start throwing more flags on pass interference. Well, you know what that means? That means that receivers are going to be running faster now. So they're running faster into the secondary, and then you saw what happened, a lot of bigger headshots. So then the NFL overcorrected again. Instead of letting more of that hand fighting go, bringing back a more physical defense, which slows players down, they tell the guys, okay, you can't launch into their heads. Now you have guys going low. Well, what kind of injuries keep you out for longer? It's knee injuries, ankle injuries. If you have a concussion, yeah, that's bad, but you're really only out for a week, unless you get something bad like Steve Young had. So you're overcorrecting because you sped up the game, because you wanted higher scoring offensive plays. You got rid of some of the other blocking and stuff and some weird zone stuff. You changed the rules. The game's played much faster now. It's not just a combination of people getting faster overall, because that's happening, but it's not at the jump that you saw in the 80s and 90s where weightlifting really hit its stride. That's kind of slowed over the past 10 years or 20 years even. Once everyone started lifting on the same plane, human bodies only have so much speed, and it's going to grow, but it's going to grow slower than what it did unless people are on steroids or something else. Now you sped up the game, you have the bigger hits, and now you're telling them, go low, and now you're having all these knee and ankle injuries, plus you're marketing older players, and older players are more prone to getting hurt. Like Rick rattled off a bunch of guys that were the faces of the league. My MVP thing was like a geriatric home in NFL years. I mean, geez, you have Peyton Manning.
And what about Michael Bennett going low?
Yeah, Michael Bennett, there's no reason why. This is my last point on the NFL. I was going to try to save it because it's going to get me fired up. He went low on purpose, and then he chased the guy, still on the ground trying to roll his ankle, roll his knee, but instead, they don't suspend him. Because you know why? Because he already made a big stink and tried to come out in the public, making him a public victim. He lied to the press, lied about the police, whatever. Now the NFL can't punish him. He's untouchable because of this weird environment they made where it's too PC to do anything. So he's basically rolling. There was a bench clearing brawl where one of the players, they were throwing stuff on the field because they're Jaguar fans. And everything that I saw from the media was saying how the Jaguar fans were out of line. No. If the NFL puts a stop on the field, the Bennett play started it. Because a lot of these fans, to them, that's their players. That's their home guys. I don't care. They're not in the locker room. They're paying money. They're basically paying their salary. If I'm paying a salary to take my son or my daughter or whoever to see their favorite player, and I see some scrum guy, roll his ankle up on purpose and get him hurt, and I just paid $60, well, let's be honest, it would be like a $500 trip if you take your family to the game, at least. So then you see some guy rolling around on the ground trying to actually hurt him. Of course I'd be mad. And you can't even blame the fans because they're throwing like $20 beers. So that's a guy throwing $20 away right at the field. I say let him throw it. If he wants to pay $20 to throw a beer, it's not like he brought in his own beer to throw. Stop it on the field, throw the penalty, eject him, suspend him for a game, show some nuts. NFL, you say about all these things like you're standing behind the troops and all this other stuff, but you're lying. It's all bullshit. You had a chance to prove it, and you didn't. And now you wait, and now this happens, and you have a chance again to prove it. But no, you're too busy going to the Steelers-Bengals, going back over the tape. Let's suspend Juju Smith-Schuster. That was too hard of a hit. He got hurt. Well, that guy's actually physically, he's trying to hurt that guy. Well, there's no proof. He could just be rolling around on the field like that. He was going for the ball. That guy was 5 yards downfield. Well, he didn't even have the ball. It was like a field goal, or it was a need ball. I don't even remember what the hell it was. I think he was kneeling down.
Yeah, it was the end. It was the end of the game.
Yeah, and the guy's he's like trying to walk away from him. He was 5 yards downfield, and Bennett was still trying to take him out. Total bullshit.
But here's the other point to that, Richie.
Go ahead.
When you look since 2000, the NFL has had 869 players arrested. So they have. It's not like the quality of character of athlete that's going through the league is not the greatest right now for the NFL. When you take those same people, like when you're at your job, whether you're doing a good job or you're doing a crappy job, you don't have people throwing things at you. So to the Jaguars fans that were throwing beers at Michael Bennett, I understand the frustration, but you don't need to throw objects onto the field because there's 1,000 freak things that could possibly happen. That whether it were beers, whether it were other things that they were throwing out there, I think it was Orpheus Roy or one of the offensive linemen for Cleveland had like his retina detached because he got hit in the face with a flag. There's things that could end someone's career by throwing stuff out on the field. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration. That don't throw stuff out there. Like be a little bit show a little bit of class. Was Bennett was 100% in the wrong, but all the Jaguars fans did by throwing stuff at him is they gave the NFL a reason to let him off with a slap on the wrist.
It wasn't him
because
though.
Then the NFL he could turn it to. They could turn that too completely around and say, well, it was the Jaguars fans that were throwing things as he was getting ejected, and they could turn the narrative to what they want to see fit. So rather than it being the player playing dirty, it was as he was ejected and leaving, fans were inappropriately throwing items, and it took away from the issue that needed to be addressed.
Okay, it was Quentin Jefferson. So for people that didn't watch the game,
right.
Yeah, I suggest you look this up. Because it started with the Bennett thing, but it wasn't him that got stuff thrown at him. I couldn't tell from the video. I watched it a couple times because I wanted to try to get the best feel for it. Jefferson is walking through the tunnel, and you can see a beer fly over his head. I'm not sure if there was already stuff being thrown on the field at that point. And I'm not saying fans go ahead. It's your right to throw stuff on the field. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's you're there at the field to have a good time. Whenever there's like a basically on-field brawl, you feel connected to that because you spent all your money. You don't want to see that. And it's the refs, their job to end it and get everyone out of the field safely. They didn't do that. They kind of like let people hang around. Jefferson was going off the field. A bottle flew down. He came back out of the tunnel. He came back and then someone
circled around.
Yeah, he circled around. Someone threw another one at him. 100% his fault. Get in the tunnel. Get out of there. You come around and then he tries to climb into the stands. There's no reason a fan should be at risk there for something that, you're at the game, you're having fun. It's not like they pat you down for weapons. You have to go through the metal detector. What was he going to throw at him? His keys? That's like a 300-pound man climbing into the stands. Get out of here. You're getting paid millions of dollars. Jog off the field, run out. You have security with you. I think there was like 2 or 3 other guys in the video walking him out through the tunnel. I don't know if they were coaches, trainers, whoever. Jog through the tunnel. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to have to build a safety tunnel for the players after a while? Just end it on the field, eject the guy. I know there was like no time on the clock. They're running it out. He was clearly doing it. The fans knew what's going on. Bennett took pot shots at the Jaguar crowd in a March or May interview this past year where he said something. It was basically to this effect. He said, the NFL doesn't want us jumping over the line of scrimmage. He's like, so I guess we have to go at their knees. He's like, especially to block field goals or something like that. And this is a paraphrase. Look up the quote. And then he said, what if it's to end the game if it's close or something? And he said, unless you're the Jaguars, because they always lose by 50 points or something like that. So basically, it's kind of it's funny because he brought this up in an interview, and it wasn't a field goal attempt. That's where my mind slipped on the field goal thing because I had this quote ready to go. But he went low and tried to hurt a guy. It's as simple as that. He kind of premeditated it in this interview, and the NFL had that piece of information, and they did nothing. So now you're going to have a league where people just don't want to watch it. They don't want to watch a bunch of mayhem. You have more penalties thrown because, like I said, they changed the rules. So now it's kind of like turning into the NBA. People don't watch the NBA as much as they once did, contrary to what ESPN tells you when their ratings go up. I brought in the numbers last week. They're only like 0.2 ahead of Major League Baseball, which ESPN also says no one watches. Meanwhile, the NFL's having 10 times the viewers. But what people don't want to watch is a penalized league where there's just flags after flags after flags. Eventually, you have to let the guys play, and if you're throwing the flags anyway, you got to control the game. You got to control the game. Rick, you have anything to add? Me and Matt have been kind of going off, or I've been going off.
That's fine. I don't understand why the play was continuing when he was still on the field. I understand that in NFL. In other leagues, the play stops. NBA, it stops. Major League, it stops until that guy is gone. NFL referee should have said, hey, no play until we get this idiot off the field. Second off, it was their team security that was with him. They couldn't even tell him keep going down the road. They let him walk. They didn't say it. They may have said something, but they let him walk right past. They didn't grab him. So team security fails as well. Also, stadium security fails as well. They let him go. It's like, okay, start a fight in the stands. Go ahead. Just go ahead. I know what's hanging behind me is the Hanson brothers who in the movie start fighting with fans. But that was a movie. This is a real-life game. And that was based upon one incident that happened with Mike Milbury in Boston where they started fighting the fans in the Madison Square Garden. It was based off an idiot thing. I mean, it's one thing to make it like a joke like that, like the Hanson brothers did, and one thing to do it. And here's the thing. You have Juju Smith get suspended for a legal hit. Gronkowski gets the 1-game suspension for giving a guy concussion. Michael Bennett doesn't get anything. And the only player, if you watch it, is Fontenot, or however you pronounce his name, the running back, is the only player that sees it. He goes after him after the play, and he gets nothing for going after him. I don't understand it. Here's why I understand. If you're in a big game and if you're in a playoff hunt, we're going to suspend you. But we're not going to suspend you if you're going into a game where we could it won't make a difference. Like, I guess, like the Patriots suspended Gronkowski, they thought they had the game in the bag. But they should have gave him a 2-gamer, but they knew the Steelers were on the schedule. I forget who Seattle has, but they need to win pretty much out to get in the playoffs. And, I mean, it's just ridiculous. The NFL is a joke. You're a joke because you have no idea how to suspend players, and you just give them passes for no freaking reason. And Michael Bennett's going to be the one that tells me about police brutality. You're the idiot that pretty much, if you would do that on the streets, go after some guy who's just standing there, that's what we call assault. So I have no idea why Michael Bennett's going to not stand for the flag and then say, I'm a good guy and I do great and I work hard and I'm great and people make me look bad. You're an idiot and you just look bad on camera on a national TV game. Congratulations, you're an idiot. That makes sense why you play in Seattle because Pete Carroll will cry more for you. He's the leading NFL crier next to John Harbaugh, and that's a congratulations that you actually are beating a Harbaugh at crying. Congratulations, Pete Carroll. I think you're going to be fired next year because you suck anymore as a coach. And they figured out how to beat you. And you can't keep a free agent. That's why guys leave and go to other teams.
They won't fire him. And I think the reason why they don't...
Because they're stupid idiots.
Yeah, they didn't suspend him because, like you said, the Seattle, they need to win. And I'm pretty sure that no one on the West Coast watches football except maybe the Seahawks. I'm pretty sure they're the only teams that gets ratings. You can't tell me people are tuning in to watch the Rams. The Raiders are pretty bad this year. No one has watched the 49ers in 5 years, or how long has Harbaugh been gone? 3, 4? They haven't watched since that year, once ownership started messing everything up. And then you need that West Coast team because people aren't tuning in for the later games. Ratings are down. So it makes sense to try to push him in. They're not going to fire Pete Carroll. He has them going for him. I guarantee, though, that if that happened, because if you watch, it's kind of already been pushed under the rug. It reminds me of the Malice in the Palace, that basketball fight where players went into the stands. They showed that nonstop for like 3 years in a row. They wouldn't even have it on the front page of ESPN or wherever because they don't want this kind of publicity. But I guarantee that if it involved another team, let's say the Cowboys, because they always have it out for the Cowboys and Jerry Jones going after Roger Goodell and whoever, if that was the Cowboys, they would never, ever stop talking about it. This would be brought up 10 years from now. Even though the guy didn't really make it into the stands or whatever, the Cowboys, they have it out for him. And like Matt was saying with the arrests, they suspend guys that don't get arrested, like Ezekiel Elliott, because it's bad for the league or whatever, just being mentioned or just being accused or whatever. But meanwhile, there are however many criminals Matt just said actually in the league, and how many of them get suspended. And I'm not a Cowboys fan, but I can sit back and look and call bullshit when I see it. If you have a player like Ezekiel Elliott who's going to have the Cowboys basically offense more balanced, it'd be like the Steelers losing Bell, and then you just suspend him, he's not even getting charges pressed against him. It doesn't make sense. And an average fan can see that. It doesn't have to be, because if it happens to the Cowboys players, then it's only a matter of time before it happens to someone on your team. And then you see other players get away with it, and it's frustrating. And to Rick's point about the police, and Matt saying about throwing stuff, think of the police who have been going out to the protests and everything, and they get pelted with things. There's no one patting them down. They're not throwing $20 plastic beer cups at them. They're getting thrown rocks, bats, whatever, and they're getting beat up, and that's their job. And then you have him. He's at a public place. He saw the first one run to the tunnel. Don't confront. You're getting paid millions of dollars. He should basically have to give up his salary and donate that to charity or something. Because if you're going to go ahead and fight fans, they're who's paying your salary. Why pay if you're at risk? People just won't show up anymore. The NFL already has an attendance problem, and they're going to have to stop blockouts soon if they haven't already, because people aren't coming. And the ticket market sucks. If you want to get resale tickets, you have to pay face value or whatever, and then you sit up in the complete nosebleed section. But that's all I have, NFL. I wanted to bring that up later after the show, kind of like as an off-topic thing, because I knew it was going to get heated, and I hate getting heated in the middle of the show. But anything else you guys want to add? That was the only other thing I had for the NFL. I didn't actually put it on the board either, because I wasn't sure how much I wanted to talk about it. But Matt, Rick, you guys have anything before we switch to college?
Good, Rick.
I forgot the game, actually. It's Rams have to go to Seattle at the 4 o'clock game, which Fox has. So that's actually the competition for the Steelers-Patriots games. So that's why there are no suspensions, because that is a 4 o'clock national TV game on the West Coast, and that's the reason why. So thanks, NFL. If you're not doing it for ratings, then what the hell are you doing it for? Roger Goodell, all about money in his wallet. That's how he got that new contract. Congratulations. You're worthless.
Matt, you have anything?
I just thought it was interesting that for as much controversy as the league has had, why in God's name would the owners extend Roger Goodell's contract? It makes no sense to push the envelope of what he's done to try to advance the league. It's almost like the owners are content because the NFL is continuing to generate money. They don't care about putting out a quality product. Goodell's putting things in place that it's advancing the dollar amount, but it's not helping out the safety of the players. It's not helping the overall quality of the league, and I think that it shows where their interests are, because if they were caring about the players and the things that they had, they would try to explore other options to see who could come in to replace him, and maybe not at the ridiculous salary that he's commanding.
Yeah, and I think with that, something's going to have to change. I mean, eventually the bubble's going to pop. They were saying that Verizon just signed some crazy deal now where they're going to be paying the NFL like almost double what they were paying to be. I think they're like the only mobile provider that could let you stream NFL games. Well, I think they doubled their contract, and now because Verizon owns Yahoo, like they did for Major League Baseball, Yahoo's going to start streaming games on their website for the NFL to kind of compete with Amazon, who paid for the digital rights for the Thursday night game. And it'll be interesting to see, because we're about to see Saturday games start. Because once college ends, the NFL has to gobble up that time slot. They were like, there's however many millions of people watching Ohio State, Michigan play. Now what are they going to watch on Saturday? Let's put an NFL game there. Let's try to watch it out. Let's steal that Alabama-Auburn crowd Saturday night, or the Big Ten Championship, ACC Championship game that Saturday night. There's a couple 10, 20 million people watching. Let's try to gobble that up. Let's shorten the weeks a little bit more for some of these players. And then, of course, they do it for the playoffs, which I don't mind for the playoffs, because that way you get to watch the games. If it's a dud, you're kind of screwed, but at least you can watch the entire game. But there's no need to do that in the regular season. And they're going to do it, of course, anyway. But speaking of Saturday games, going to go into our last topic, the Heisman Trophy, college football. With the NFL MVP race, I talked about it a little bit. The Heisman Trophy, it's lost its luster. I had the stats for you guys. I sent them to the guys here. Where were they? The ratings dropped off pretty hard because they're not promoting it well. And the people who are in the Heisman race, they already went ahead and who's going to win. There's no drama. So it doesn't make any sense. So this one drew a 1.5 overnight rating, which is the lowest rated Heisman Trophy ceremony in history. And it's even down 12% from last year, which was also the least viewed Heisman. So every year it's getting worse. Now, could it be because people are cutting ESPN and ESPN is putting these on cable? I don't know. ESPN recently made some moves in the digital market where they bought the regional Fox networks, and some people are thinking that they might try to go over the air for free, which would increase so if you have I have a cable here antenna where I can pick up the 5 big channels: ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, and I think the other one's the CW, and then Univision, which might be tied in there. So I guess there's 6 big channels I get. There's some rumors that ESPN might try to push that with the Fox digital networks, where you wouldn't even have to pay for ESPN anymore. And then the advertising companies would pay for these rights, which actually would be pretty decent, because then you could watch your local team and it would kind of end blackouts anymore. You wouldn't have to pay for that. Like down here, I would have to pay for Fox Sports Carolinas to watch the Hurricanes, NC State, the Tar Heels, Duke, Charlotte Bobcats, or Charlotte Hornets now, and the Carolina Panthers. In Pittsburgh, where you guys are, you have the Pirates, where they're on AT&T networks, which it'll be interesting to see, because for the Pittsburgh guys out there, ESPN didn't buy that channel. So if they do go this route, are you still going to have to pay to watch the Pirates, or eventually will ESPN buy that up too? I don't know. But whenever you're looking at ratings just completely dropping off a cliff because people aren't paying for cable, something has to be done. So it's either, I'm hoping they go over the air. If not, they're going to have to stream like they do for Netflix. And it's not just a college football thing. College football ratings are very good. I've talked about them on the show. But this one, there was no drama. I called it on the show. They're going to have Baker Mayfield. He's going to win. I don't care what his off-the-field stuff was. Some people said they boycotted because of that. You don't lose 12% because of the guy is offensive or whatever he did on the field. It's because people already know who won. There's no drama. Plus, it was like a 3-hour show or something crazy. They did this with the, what was it, the NCAA selection show that one year. CBS made it 3 hours. And then someone just tweeted out the bracket before it started. And then no one watched, and they were trying to go after the guy who leaked the bracket. It's not the bracket's fault. People just tune in to see the picks. They don't want a 3-hour show. They just want to turn in, see who wins the Heisman. They don't want this dog and pony show. I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on that. Start with you, Matt. What do you think about the Heisman? Anything about it?
Actually, it didn't even dawn on me that the Heisman was that night. I know we had talked about it, but it was something to me that it didn't really connect with, because it was clear. I mean, they, without saying it, they said exactly who they were going to have winning it. So, you knew going in exactly what they were who the person was going to be. And I think it was interesting to see. I wish I could remember where I saw this at, but there was comments from Kirk Herbstreit when the University of Tennessee player that flipped off the Florida fans, after he had his comment, they made that gesture. Real quick, Herbstreit said he should be made an example of. He should be kicked off the team immediately. That it brings the program all this disgrace and all this shame. But then several different instances, he goes to bat for Baker Mayfield and says how he's just an emotional guy and just lets the heat of the moment, and he's just his competitive spirit. It's like, again, it's another example of picking and choosing who you want to be the good guy, who you want to be the villain. And I think that message has definitely fallen deaf with a lot of viewers because of the ratings drop. When you automatically are pushing the narrative that Baker Mayfield is your top player, well, then I don't have to tune in. I didn't have to tune in to see who was going to win, because they put crap up next to him, and for as much hype as he was getting, there was no one else that there was no drama there. It was an automatic that it was going to him. And even with the people that they put in there could have even been a little bit of speculation had they put Saquon Barkley in there. I know that at times his stat numbers didn't match up, but there could have been an element of drama because of the things that he does, during games, in the weight room, things that make him an intriguing athletic prospect. Could have had an air of something to the mix instead of it just being a complete runaway.
Yeah, and I think I have a couple points here before I'll let you go here in a sec, Rick, because I'd like to get your thoughts, especially on the Saquon thing. I think the voting needs to change. This was done when there was a time when people were regionalized and they could only watch certain games. And you had to watch it. You watched your local team, and then you voted basically from your area. And you've had a lot of people complain over the years. Well, the South has more people. They have more media writers, whatever, so they got the South vote. If the guy on the West Coast, he gets to all the West Coast votes, like you heard it with USC. USC has however many winners, 7 winners, because the whole West Coast would watch them. Now with the internet, you don't need these small regional guys that just vote for whoever. And they vote for basically whoever national media tells them to vote for. They don't watch all the games. They might only be fans of a smaller school. And they see, and they're like, well, Baker Mayfield, everyone's saying he's the best. I'll just do my vote for him. And then you only have 3 finalists. And Saquon definitely should have been a finalist. I think the guy from San Diego State, the running back out there, he broke 2,000 yards. He should have been a finalist. He wasn't even there, and the fact that they don't invite these guys is a joke. When you only have, I think it was, they have 3 guys? Was it Love? They re-invited, who was the winner from Louisville last year?
Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield. I believe there was only 3. You need to diversify that and make it like somewhere intriguing. And ironically, this is on the heel, a 20-year anniversary of the 1997 one. I actually saw ESPN was pushing some stuff out, what I thought was pretty cool, where that year you had, I think it was Ryan Leaf, he wasn't really in it, but then you had Randy Moss, Charles Woodson, and Peyton Manning. Those are 3 of the greatest, not just college athletes of all time, NFL players. All 3 of those guys played for 10 years plus, played in big games. I think, did Moss, he didn't win a Super Bowl, did he? The other 2 did. I think they lost that year. That was the Tyree helmet catch year, wasn't it? Yes.
So he played in one, but he didn't win one. But Peyton Manning won 2. Charles Woodson won at least 1. with the Packers. So you have these great guys, and there was intrigue that year. People thought it was going to go to Peyton. They thought he would have the South vote. Then you throw in Randy Moss, who was in West Virginia at Marshall. They were thinking, was he going to steal some of Peyton Manning's votes? You don't know. It was a different time, basically pre-internet. Charles Woodson, one of the most dominant defensive players, and he's basically the first defensive player to win it. This year, compare that to this year. You have no intrigue. You have basically two quarterbacks, one who got invited because he won last year, and just based on the points, a lot of people, whenever the first place votes are so skewed for one player, you can't tell me that a running back that breaks 2,000 yards doesn't deserve some first place votes. It's just a broken system. The regional guys aren't voting for the best player they see. If the West Coast guys don't vote for that guy, no one's going to vote for that guy. And so they kind of need to rehaul the system. There are a lot of blogs out there. You can't do a fan vote. I know the Major League Baseball started doing that. Maybe do some type of formula where you have the fans vote. But then even then, if the media is hyping the same guy over and over, most fans are going to vote for that guy. I mean, you might get some passionate fan bases, but they have to do something. They have to try something. Rick, what are your thoughts? I know Saquon, he should have been there, even if only the Pennsylvania guys vote for him.
Yeah, I don't understand why 3 people. I think that was one reason why you didn't. You only had 3 people go, and you already knew the Jackson had no shot at winning. It was like, you got no shot, buddy. You had an okay season. So I think that's the reason why you put this in prime time and put it for like 2.5 hours. I mean, I got better things to do. I mean, I can tell you right now, even at normal nights at my house, I'm watching Tampa Bay and St. Louis Blues right now. That's more intriguing than talking to somebody's mother about how great they are. No mother that you're going to interview at the Heisman Trophy is going to say, my kid sucks. He's 3rd place. I mean, come on. You hear the same exact story regurgitated year in and year out. It's like, we'll interview their Pop Warner coach and see what he says. ESPN is just making it a drama queen. It's like the Miss America pageant. I don't even care to watch. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, it should be an hour at best. Interview the player, interview their head coach at the program. That's it. Boom. Let's announce it. Don't tell me every story about the kid since 7 years old. Don't care. Don't care. And it's just, when you do that, you put it in prime time, there's more sporting events to watch. There's hockey. There's, there's college basketball is already starting. I mean, there's other things you could turn on. Basketball, NBA's in full swing now. I mean, there's other things to watch. It's ESPN making it a dramatization, which only they could do, and they think it's the greatest thing ever, and we'll tell you it. And literally, they threw it was guaranteed before Baker Mayfield. I was with Mrs. Rick that night. We were at Dave & Buster's. We looked at the screen and we saw, oh my God, what time is it? We looked at our clock. We're like, oh, they should be making the pick here in 5 minutes. We looked up, saw Baker Mayfield, and then just headed back to playing, video games at Dave & Buster's. I mean, there was no need to turn on that first hour and a half. Not even a reason. So I don't get it. I think it's just something for ratings, something to brag up. Don't care Chris Fowler interviews. I mean, if you give me a Chris Fowler interview and a pillow, I got a good hour of sleep in right now because he's boring as hell. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Do I need to see Lee Corso going over the X and O's and why this player's great? And the player just sits there like this. Like while they're doing it, come on. I got better things to do with my time. I could be looking at fantasy baseball things, and that shouldn't even be looked at yet. Ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know how long the actual show was, but it's longer. I know it was at least an hour a couple years ago. They just need to condense it. You don't need all those feel-good stories. Play those as promos on like SportsCenter or something leading up to the day. Try to get hyped to tune in. But they're trying to sell advertisers. I found the votes. Baker Mayfield had 2,398. Bryce Love was second. He only had 1,300, so it wasn't even close. And then everyone else was in triple digits. Saquon had 304. And then Rashad Penny, the guy from San Diego State, he had 175. So these guys are just getting I don't know what the voters do. I think they do first, second, and third place votes. And I would say just vote. You get one vote, and then do it closed ballot. But then, even then, you're still going to have, I don't know. I wonder if you opened it up more. Like anyone that works at I don't know how many people they let vote. I would assume they have to vet them. But I think anyone that does any media, local sports, anything, you just fill out, give them your website, you do a blog, whatever. Like it would be nice. Like let's say they just give us a vote. We do a show. We do it every week. They give us one vote, whatever. We talk about it and then we put it in. We send it in. Because you're voting for Baker Mayfield. Are you voting for the record? Are you voting for the best quarterback? Because are you voting for the best player? Because is he the best player? A lot of games that they've won, Oklahoma has outclassed. Oklahoma's talent level compared to the rest of the Big 12, they are way ahead. There's no one really even close in talent on the roster if you look at the composites. The only roster that they played that was more talented was the Ohio State game. Yeah, they had a great game, but for the rest of the season, as a quarterback, he's performing as expected. It's kind of like whenever they give the knock on Boise State. Boise State's conference isn't that good. They're just more talented. That's basically Oklahoma right now. Maybe if Texas gets better, Texas can be on that level. But right now, if you're looking at the composites, Oklahoma is just more talented than everyone. So is it really that great of a year for a quarterback on the most talented team in their conference? Or how about some of these other guys? Like even Bryce Love, he's playing on Stanford. Are they the most talented team in their conference? No. He has to go up against USC, who always has more talent. And he's running for these yards. And you watched him play in, was it the Pac-12 championship game? He was hurt, and he was still trying to get it done. Vote for him. Vote for Saquon. They're not the most talented team in the conference. They're third behind Ohio State and Michigan. He destroyed Michigan, a more talented Michigan team. So if you're looking at a guy who's most valuable, I mean, is that what you're voting for? I said I love Baker Mayfield. I love this trash talk. Would I have voted for him and the best player? He might be the funnest to watch, but, I mean, you really have to weigh these things down. I don't know. That was my last topic. You guys have anything else to add, college football or anything? We'll go around. We'll stick with college football. Matt, anything you want to say about the Florida State? They're filling in their coach and stuff?
I'm kind of happy right now with where they're at with things. I know I was a little bit sad to see Tim Brewster got picked up by Jimbo Fisher over at Texas A&M, as well as Graham, their running backs coach, committed over. Florida State hasn't pushed for a lot of other of their own hirings yet. I don't know if the waits for after their bowl game to announce hirings, or if they have to wait for other teams to finish their bowl games before announcing some of those picks. But I also saw defensive coordinator Charles Kelly went to Colorado State. For as much as I've been hard on him and think he got kind of a bum deal the last run here, I think the fresh start should do well for him. I'm curious to see what the next couple weeks are going to bring. I think they're doing the right things, getting into a lot of homes right now. I think the early signing period is going to be interesting because that's going to be coming up here in the next couple weeks. Players can sign early.
Yep.
And sign on I believe it's the 20th.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And can commit early. But I think because of so many coaching changes that you'll see, I will really be surprised to see how many players actually turn in their letter of letter of commitment during that date. I think a lot of players you're going to see, because of all of the turnover, you'll see them hold off for the later date so that they're able to have another opportunity to have an in-home or another official on-campus visit with the new coaching staff to make sure that things are a right match for their skill set and what college that they're planning on spending their athletic careers with.
Yeah, Rick, you have anything to add? And I'll get back to your point in a second here, Matt.
Two things. With Herman Edwards going to Arizona State, I don't see it working out very well, but I wish him the best of luck. I mean, best of luck in the desert. It's going to be tough. Those fans are ravious. And they still think they have a shot at something, and they don't. Jake Plummer's 50 years old now. Scott Frost is going to coach for UFC in the bowl game, even though he's with Nebraska. I think Nebraska will get good. UFC, I wish the best of luck to, but I think Nebraska could come back to prominence if Scott Frost can do what he did at UCF, if he could translate to Nebraska. I think that's a team that's going to be intriguing here. Maybe not in 18, but 19. I'm going to say 19. I want to see what happens in 19.
Well, the Herm Edwards point, he kept Todd Graham's staff. Why the hell make the coaching change then?
The coordinator's gone now. Bennett's gone. The old pick guy. He's gone.
Geez,
Family matters. It's called you were going to get cut.
So he kept like everyone else. They're like, hey, we don't like the direction of our program. We need basically a glorified CEO to come in here and hang out. We'll pay you $2 million. Just come to practice. Coaches already know what they're doing. They have everything set. You're just going to come in and oversee it because you've been out of the game for a while. That's basically Herm Edwards. Every Arizona State fan has to be just shaking their head, ready to just cancel their season tickets because that's the biggest mail-in job I've ever heard. Because I was excited when Illinois hired Lovie Smith just because they were trying. At least he was closer to coaching than Herm Edwards. And Lovie Smith hasn't even panned out. How is Herm Edwards going to pan out if you keep the whole staff? If the players aren't motivated to work hard for the current staff and then you keep them and then just give them a guy that the players, they're not going to take serious, that just spells disaster. I would love to eat my words on that because I would like to see Arizona State do well. I'd like to see some more teams from the Pac-12 rise up, but I just don't see it. Back to your point, Matt, the early signing day, I wanted to look up Michigan's class from last year because I know it affected us. Basically, to get into college like earlier, to sign your guy, you could have them enroll in the spring semester. So you have a lot of these high recruits, they go to like these academies and things. Harbaugh actually had 11 early enrollees last year. So they basically had 11 guys that would have signed at this December 20th date. But yeah, to your point, that's not going to work out for everyone. Because people who sign on this first date, they're either going to want their recruiting over with or they're probably going to get ready to early enroll. And it'll be interesting to see. I do know that basketball wraps up kind of early. I want to say a couple years, John Beilein for Michigan had his class done at the first signing period. So basketball's had it for a while. Now that's much smaller classes. That might be only signing 2 or 3 guys in a year. You wrap those up at the first signing period and then you can relax all summer. It'll be interesting to see if football has that. I guarantee not every class is going to be filled, and you're still going to be waiting for players to sign last minute in February. Now, maybe this first day will turn into kind of like, I think it's that day only. So it's not like they can sign this whole period. You either have to sign that day or you sign that February date. But it'll be interesting to see how many players and fan bases turn it into like a Christmas present thing because everyone has been doing videos. I think one guy last year jumped out of a plane skydiving to announce his pick, or maybe that was 2 years ago. I actually think it was Ole Miss. A recruit did that. He jumped out of a plane. I could be wrong on the team, but Ole Miss, they actually have been granted by the school their release. So a couple of their players have been shopped around. Shea Patterson, the number 1, I think at least pro quarterback from 2 years ago, has stated that he's going to sign with Michigan. I don't know how that's going to affect recruiting classes. A couple Ole Miss guys were up in Michigan for their basketball win over UCLA last week on Saturday, which was a great win. So good to see our guys do some well there. But yeah, I think this will be one class where you see some coaches that are doing, like Harbaugh did, the satellite camps, which other ones are going to try to get guys to sign early and then take a gamble on some bigger names later. I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to fill out your team needs now, get them in if you can, because that's what Harbaugh did last year. And I think you're going to see with a lot of the younger coaches. Now, some of the older coaches that complained about summer camps and stuff like that, I don't see this affecting them. So I think it kind of depends on your demeanor. Are you going to be a guy that's going to get it done? And I could see some coaches complaining about it, but that's just sports. Any closing thoughts for you guys?
Florida State's still undefeated in college basketball. One of the handful of teams left up there with Villanova, TCU, Miami, Georgetown, and those Arizona State Sun Devils. So,
yeah, Arizona State's crazy because of Arizona. Arizona got hit with that. The allegations that they were stealing recruits. I don't know if like a lot of them flipped to Arizona State or what, but they're undefeated just as kind of karma. knowing that their neighbor has been cheating for all those years, and they're sitting there looking at a good season. Rick, you have anything, closing thoughts?
I have one thank you to shout out here. I'm going to cover over my middle name, my first name here, but I'm going to try to put it on here. Eric Timms, I won your contest, so to Rick, so I'm trying to get it there. So just want to give a big shout out to Eric Timms coming back from Korea. So I actually have a game model bat, as you can tell. It's actually his model bat right there. So just want to say thank you for that, and I'll be cheering for the Milwaukee Brewers here. And I'll probably be buying an Eric Timms jersey for myself for Christmas after getting this thing. So thank you, Eric Timms. Best luck to you next season. So go Brewers.
So yeah, you hear that, teams? Rick's fandom can be bought for a very low price. Just
my heart can be
just
bought.
an Eric Timms bat. Just send it to him. He'll cheer for you. He'll jump right on the bandwagon. Send him anything.
Oh, yeah. I'll be buying a hat, a jersey. It'll be great. See you in spring training.
My last thing, I meant to bring it up in the Steel City talk. It doesn't really have to deal with Pittsburgh, but since Matt mentioned Villanova's undefeated, Villanova is now ranked number 1 in the AP poll once again. Might have been their first time since the national championship. But I was curious because Michigan, when they played UCLA, they actually had to recruit a freshman from Pennsylvania who played a bunch of good minutes. So I wanted to see, where did the top recruits, and I'm going to tweet this out, from Pennsylvania last year end up in basketball? So I just stopped at the top 8. These are 3 stars and up. Michigan got a 3-star guy, Eli Brooks, that played significant minutes. None of these guys have gone to Pitt or Penn State. Villanova nabbed the 7th guy, 3-star. Then the 6th rated guy in Pennsylvania, 3-star, went to Rhode Island. The 5th guy, another 3-star, went to South Carolina. 4th, a 3-star to Indiana. Then 3rd, a 4-star to Villanova. So Villanova had 2 of the top 8. Then 2 5-star guys. The 2nd rated guy went to Kentucky. And then for some reason, the number 1 guy went to Miami, which isn't known as a basketball power. But that's something where Pennsylvania as a whole, if they're going to compete, Penn State, they had a great start to the season. They got beat by NC State. Not going to do too hot in the Big Ten season once again, because you can't keep the talent at home. We brought it up on earlier episodes about Pitt basketball. They used to go on a run. Now they're not even getting in-state recruits. You can't be losing guys to Rhode Island, South Carolina. Give me a break. They need to keep those guys in-state if they're going to have any success. Rick, you're laughing. He froze out, though. What are you going to say?
I'm just laughing because I tell you, Penn State can't recruit. We can recruit wrestlers, we can recruit football players, we can't recruit basketball players. And Pitt's awful right now. They lost to Penn State and Montana. Montana? Is that where basketball players are? They have trees there. I don't know what else is in Montana. I'm going to have to look up what's in Montana right now.
Green to Pitt. Green to Pitt.
You want Green?
Did you guys get the picture I sent you where Ben Howling was looking at his shoes walking through Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask him, how do you lose to Penn State? And I just let him walk by me. I was with Mrs. Rick, and I'm like, I'm not going to embarrass her in front of it, asking Ben Howling, how do you lose to Penn State? How do you lose to Penn State? Really? Really? That's embarrassing.
Rick, how do they lose recruits to Rhode Island is what I'm asking.
Because they can't recruit.
And Rhode Island's actually close to being ranked. So just think if they could get some of these guys. I think they're in the others receiving votes, but
I'm going to throw this one out to you. I won't be surprised if Georgetown comes back into this area like they did once before.
I was actually surprised. I was surprised that they weren't on here and Maryland wasn't on here. Because they have to get some of these guys.
Like the Philadelphia kids. Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, Penn State basketball hasn't been good since the Lisicki brothers were there in, 96 when they made the Sweet 16 run? Was it 96, 97? Somewhere in there. And Lisicki was on his, 6th-year red shirt, gray shirt, injury-riddled playing. It was embarrassing, but, I mean, they haven't been good for years and won't be. I mean, they can't recruit, period. End of story.
Yep. We'll end with that. We do have a college bowl pick'em. I send it out. Make sure you join. We'll be giving away a free T-shirt. And we're probably going to do a special show on that, but I haven't figured out when or what. At least I'll be doing it. I'll see what other guys can get on. I know Jeff wanted to try to do that, but I'll be sending that out. So follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Jeff was at the Steelers game. He's been throwing some photos up. In my studio, I finished touching up the missing spots and stuff, so we'll be decorating that soon, throwing some more stuff up. So thanks for listening, and we will see you guys next week.